Assassination of Abraham Lincoln. On April 14, 1865, President Abraham Lincoln attended a play at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. The American Civil War had just ended days earlier, and the country was beginning to celebrate the Union's victory. Lincoln went to the theater with his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, hoping to relax after years of war and pressure. During the performance, a well-known actor named John Wilkes Booth entered the presidential box. Booth was a strong supporter of the Confederate cause and believed Lincoln had destroyed the South. At around 10:15 p.m., he quietly approached the president from behind and fired a pistol at the back of Lincoln's head. Booth then jumped onto the stage and escaped the theater while shouting a phrase linked to rebellion. Panic spread through the audience as doctors rushed to help the president. Lincoln was carried across the street to a nearby house where he remained unconscious through the night. Early the next morning, on April 15, 1865, Abraham Lincoln died from his wound. He became the first U.S. president to be assassinated. His death shocked the nation and marked one of the darkest moments in American history. Assassination of James A. Garfield. On July 2, 1881, President James A. Garfield arrived at the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Station in Washington, D.C. He was preparing to travel to New England for a short trip and expected a normal day. However, a man named Charles J. Guiteau was waiting for him inside the station. Guiteau was angry because he believed he deserved a government job after supporting Garfield's election campaign. When he was denied the position, he convinced himself that killing the president would somehow help the country. As Garfield walked through the station, Guiteau stepped forward and fired 2 shots. One bullet hit the president's arm while the second struck his back and became lodged inside his body. Garfield collapsed, and the station quickly filled with panic. Doctors tried to save him, but medical knowledge at the time was limited. The wound became infected, and Garfield's condition slowly worsened. After suffering for more than 2 months, he died on September 19, 1881. The assassination shocked the nation and later led to reforms in the U.S. civil service system to reduce political patronage. Assassination of William McKinley. On September 6, 1901, President William McKinley attended a public reception at the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York. The event allowed citizens to meet the president and shake his hand. Hundreds of people lined up to greet him inside the Temple of Music building. Among them was a man named Leon Czolgosz, an anarchist who believed political leaders were enemies of the people. He hid a small revolver under a cloth wrapped around his hand, pretending he had an injury. When Czolgosz stepped forward to greet the president, he quickly fired 2 shots at close range. One bullet hit McKinley in the chest, while another struck his stomach. Security officers immediately captured the attacker as the crowd reacted in shock. Doctors rushed McKinley to a nearby hospital and performed surgery. At first, it seemed he might recover, but infection developed in his wounds. His condition slowly worsened over the next few days. On September 14, 1901, President McKinley died from his injuries. His death led to stronger security measures for U.S. presidents and brought Vice President Theodore Roosevelt to power. Assassination of John F. Kennedy. On November 22, 1963, President John F. Kennedy was visiting Dallas as part of a political trip. He rode in an open convertible motorcade through downtown streets while crowds gathered to see him. The atmosphere was festive, and many people were waving as the president passed by. As the motorcade moved through Dealey Plaza, gunshots suddenly rang out. One of the bullets struck Kennedy in the neck, and another hit his head. The president collapsed in the car. As panic spread through the crowd, Kennedy was rushed to Parkland Memorial Hospital, but doctors were unable to save him. He was pronounced dead less than an hour later. Police soon arrested a suspect named Lee Harvey Oswald. However, 2 days later, Oswald was shot and killed by nightclub owner Jack Ruby while in police custody. The assassination shocked the United States and the world. It remains one of the most studied and controversial events in American history. Attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan. On March 30, 1981, President Ronald Reagan was leaving the Washington Hilton after giving a speech to a labor union group. As he walked toward his limousine, a crowd of reporters and bystanders gathered nearby. Suddenly, a man named John Hinckley Jr. pulled out a revolver and fired 6 shots in just a few seconds. One of the bullets struck Reagan and ricocheted into his chest, narrowly missing his heart. 3 other people were also wounded, including Press Secretary James Brady and a police officer. Secret Service agents quickly pushed Reagan into the presidential car and rushed him to a nearby hospital. Doctors performed emergency surgery to remove the bullet from his lung. Despite the serious injury, Reagan survived the attack. Hinckley later said he carried out the shooting to gain the attention of actress Jodie Foster. He was arrested immediately and later found not guilty by reason of insanity. The incident led to stronger security procedures for protecting the president during public appearances. Attempted assassination of Theodore Roosevelt. On October 14, 1912, former President Theodore Roosevelt was campaigning in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Although he was no longer president, he was running again in the election as the candidate of the Progressive Party. As Roosevelt stepped out of his hotel to give a speech, a man named John Flamang Schrank approached him in the crowd and fired a revolver at close range. The bullet struck Roosevelt in the chest. Fortunately, the bullet slowed down after passing through a folded speech manuscript and a metal glasses case in his pocket. Although wounded, Roosevelt quickly realized the injury was not immediately fatal. Instead of going straight to the hospital, he insisted on continuing to the auditorium where hundreds of supporters were waiting. Standing on stage with blood visible on his shirt, Roosevelt told the audience he had just been shot but would still deliver his speech. He spoke for nearly 90 minutes before finally seeking medical treatment. Roosevelt survived the attack, and the bullet remained in his body for the rest of his life. Attempted assassination of Harry S. Truman. On November 1, 1950, President Harry S. Truman was staying at Blair House in Washington, D.C. The White House was being renovated at the time, so Blair House served as the temporary residence for the president and his family. 2 armed men linked to a Puerto Rican nationalist movement approached the building. They were Griselio Torresola and Oscar Collazo. Their goal was to assassinate Truman to draw attention to their political cause. As the attackers reached the front of Blair House, they opened fire on police officers and Secret Service agents guarding the building. A fierce gun battle broke out on the street. One of the attackers was killed during the exchange of gunfire, while the other was captured. During the attack, a White House police officer named Leslie Caufelt was fatally wounded, but managed to return fire and stop one of the attackers. President Truman was inside the building at the time and was not injured. The dramatic gunfight became one of the most serious assassination attempts against a sitting U.S. president. Assassination attempts on Gerald Ford. In September 1975, President Gerald Ford survived 2 separate assassination attempts within just 17 days. Both incidents happened in California and shocked the nation. The first attempt occurred on September 5th in Sacramento. A woman named Lynette Fromm, who was connected to the Charles Manson cult, approached the president while he was greeting supporters in a park. She pointed a handgun at Ford, but the weapon failed to fire. Secret Service agents immediately tackled and arrested her before any shots were fired. Only 2 weeks later, on September 22nd, another woman named Sarah Jane Moore attempted to shoot the president outside a hotel in San Francisco. She fired 1 shot toward Ford, but a bystander quickly pushed her arm, causing the bullet to miss the president. Both attackers were arrested and later sentenced to prison. These 2 incidents led to major changes in presidential security, especially during public appearances, where presidents interact with crowds. Attempted assassination of Andrew Jackson. On January 30, 1835, President Andrew Jackson attended a funeral at the United States Capitol in Washington, D.C. As he was leaving the building, a man suddenly stepped forward from the crowd. The attacker was Richard Lawrence, a house painter who believed strange conspiracy theories and claimed he was owed money by the government. Lawrence pulled out a pistol and fired at the president from only a few feet away. However, the gun misfired and did not shoot. Lawrence immediately pulled out a second pistol and tried again. Surprisingly, the second weapon also failed to fire. Andrew Jackson, known for his strong temper, reacted quickly. Instead of running away, he reportedly attacked the gunman with his cane while others rushed to stop the attacker. Lawrence was arrested and later declared mentally ill. The event became the first recorded assassination attempt against a sitting U.S. president, and Jackson survived without any injuries. Attempted assassination of Franklin D. Roosevelt. On February 15, 1933, President-elect Franklin D. Roosevelt was visiting Miami. At the time, Roosevelt had already won the presidential election but had not yet been officially sworn into office. He was giving a speech from the back of an open car at Bayfront Park, while a large crowd gathered to hear him. During the event, a man named Giuseppe Zangara pulled out a pistol and fired several shots toward Roosevelt. The attacker was standing in a crowd and had difficulty aiming properly. As he fired, people around him tried to stop him. Roosevelt was not hit by the bullets, but several others were wounded. One of the victims was Anton Cermak, who was standing near the president-elect. Cermak later died from his injuries. Zangara was quickly arrested at the scene. He later confessed to the shooting and was executed in 1933. Although Roosevelt survived the attack, the incident became one of the most serious assassination attempts against a future U.S. president.